Hello, welcome to Fibro Warrior, my new normal. I'm MJ Aragon, and I'm here today with my producers, Jojo Merricks.
Hello.
And Tony Jeffries.
Hello.
Today we have a call-in, and his name is Floyd Haas. Say hello, Floyd.
How are you doing, MJ?
I thank you so much. It's nice to get a man's perspective on fibromyalgia, since most of the fibro sufferers seem to be women. So you are 57 years old now, correct?
Correct.
And how old were you when you first realized something wasn't quite right with your health?
Well, I was 43.
43? Okay. And so you've been dealing with this for quite a while. What made you, what was it that you felt or you were dealing with that made you discover it? Was it...
What happened was I was riding my mountain bike and I crashed. And I took a handlebar to the rib. I broke a rib and bled internally and collapsed the lung. What happened was with that, I didn't go to the hospital right away because I'd broken a lot of bones before, and I knew that there was nothing they could do for a rib.
Okay.
So a couple of days later, I just couldn't breathe. And so I went to the hospital and I said, I'm afraid I punctured my lung.
Right.
And
Where's the story?
All right. Go ahead and just finish off where you were telling the story instead of we'll doing it over. We'll just edit it in. Does that work for you?
Can you hear me okay, MJ?
Oh, yeah. Actually, much better. That's much better.
Yeah.
Okay. Just go ahead and pick up, tell me the story. How did you, something wasn't quite right about your health. Tell me your bike accident. Start with that.
Okay. So I crashed on my mountain bike, and when I crashed on my mountain bike, I broke a rib. I knew I broke the rib. There was no question about it. But a couple of days later, I went to the hospital because I couldn't breathe. I knew there was nothing that you can do for a broken rib, so I just didn't bother going before.
Right.
But it felt like I punctured my lung or something. And so when I went there, they did an x-ray. They looked for everything. They said, no, you're fine. Didn't puncture a lung. You didn't even break your rib. You just bruised it. And I said, well, okay, when can I start riding again? They said 10 days. I said, all right. A couple of days later, I was really in distress again. When I was trying to sleep, I couldn't breathe.
Right.
So I went to the hospital again. They did an x-ray, said there was nothing wrong with me. And so sent me home. The third time, they treated me like I was some kind of hypochondriac. That was like 2 days later.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
And they treated me like I was a hypochondriac. Yes. They sent me home. And so the 10th day rolls around, I go mountain bike riding again.
Okay.
And the first part of my mountain bike ride is a 1 mile uphill climb. I get to the top of it and I can't breathe at all. I call my wife and she says, it sounds like you're having a gallbladder attack. So I load up my bike, take it home, go to the hospital, tell them I think I'm having a gallbladder attack. And I told them about the bike crash.
Right.
Well, I'm in the hospital for 3 days. Finally, they find out that I had broken my rib, that meaty portion had bled and collapsed my lung. There was so much blood, it was the size of a small water bottle.
Oh, my gosh.
750 milliliters, right?
Oh,
4 times they couldn't find it. So right after they put a drink box straw in my back, drain the blood out of my body cavity. My lung opens up, which scared me to death, because they didn't tell me it was going to all of a sudden fill back up like that.
Okay.
It felt like my chest exploded.
Wow.
They wheel me right into another room and do a thing that's called a HIDA scan for your gallbladder. It resembles or it duplicates a gallbladder attack.
Okay.
So right after I had a procedure, they send me in for this test, and I have a gallbladder that's all mucked up, they said.
Okay.
So I set up arrangements to have a surgeon do surgery on me in 2 months because I didn't want to do it right after the other procedure. I asked him all these questions. I was really concerned about it, and he said, look, it's a very common thing. It's cut and dry. We won't have any problems. And then he did while he did the gallbladder surgery, while I was out, he said I had an umbilical hernia. And so he fixed it without asking me. There's no authorization forms. He put one of these little half-ass 99-cent store mesh things.
Yes, I've heard about that. Yeah.
I started having problems with this in the recovery room.
Oh, wow.
And I've never had any relief from it since.
Really? So they didn't take it back out?
No, no, because at first they kept denying that there was a problem. And then I started having, other problems with it. I immediately started having nerve damage problems. It would feel, for the first year and a half, it felt like somebody was stabbing me in the chest with a knife, like all the time.
Oh, I know that feeling.
I couldn't sleep. You know what I'm talking
yeah,
about,
I
right?
know that feeling. Yes. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so was it that the reason that you got your diagnosis or did it take more time?
Well, it took a little bit of time. What happened was I started going to the doctor, and my personal doctor kept telling me that there was nothing wrong with me. Like literally, one time her person that answered the phone, like her assistant, said there's nothing wrong with you and hung up on me. And so I went to her, to not her, but her replacement, because she was on vacation.
Okay.
And so he started sending me for all these tests.
Good.
We found out that I had pancreatitis, which is kind of a common thing from a gallbladder, problem.
Okay.
But you can actually, you can have lots of problems from that. I had pancreatitis, I had shingles, and I had the shingles and the pancreatitis, and a problem with my thyroid, a hyperthyroid condition.
Okay.
So
hyper or hypo?
The nerve problem.
I'm sorry. Was it hyper or hypo? Because there are two different ones. I didn't catch which one you said.
Hyper. That was
okay.
the problem. As I used to exercise, but I couldn't, because even walking across a room, my heart rate would go up to like 135 beats a minute.
Right.
And just stay there. It would just hang. So it was like I was coked out, or you know what I mean, like
right.
Like somebody, like I drank 10 energy drinks or something.
Right. I completely understand.
So then I kept going to all these different people trying to find out what the stabbing in the chest thing was. And I had some scares. I had to go to a neurologist, but this neurologist was somebody, I don't know how to pronounce this, a diagnostician, right? Like people came from all over. He had been published and everything else. And he goes, I think you have this really rare form of cancer.
Oh, God.
So he goes, I'm going to test it for you. He goes, here's the good news. If it's true, if you have it, it's very treatable, and it doesn't even go into like remission. Like we can get rid of it, if it is cancer. So, that was, of course, was 2 weeks waiting for the results to come back. I go to get the results. My wife goes with me. We're in the room, and he has like 4 other people come in the room, and I'm like, oh my God, this is not going to be good, right?
Right.
And so he said, oh, actually, these are just students, and I'm just trying to, let them see what we're doing here.
Okay.
And he said, so the good news is that you don't have the cancer. He said, so here's the deal. He said, I'm not going to diagnose you, but I'm going to treat you. He said, because you have fibromyalgia and you have shingles.
Okay.
He said, but I'm not going to give you that diagnosis because it will give you problems getting insurance and stuff like that, because this was before Obamacare.
Yes.
So
can't have pre-existing.
Those type of problems.
Yeah.
Right. So you didn't want to let other people know that you had this type of problem if you were going to ever go shopping for insurance again or something. Mm-hmm. So he started treating me with Neurontin. Do you know? Have you ever taken that?
I've heard of it. I took Topamax.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
Okay. They always want to have all these stupid alternatives to painkillers,
yes.
which are, of course, no good either, but that are way worse. He wanted me to work up to like 4 of these tablets a day.
Oh, jeez.
I only did 3, and I would not feel anything. Like I opened the door one time, and it broke my big toenail to where it was sticking straight up, and blood was like everywhere, and I didn't even know that it happened.
Oh, my God.
So I got off of that, which I got to tell you, I think I know what it feels like to get off of heroin. Withdrawals were horrible from it. Just horrible.
I bet. I kind of relate to that because what they put me, my neurologist put me on Topamax, and that stuff was a nightmare. I felt like a zombie. And after, of course, fibromyalgia, your life is going to change drastically because you have all these things going on and new information. But prior to your surgeries and all of this happening, what was your life like? What did you used to do that you really can't do now?
Well, I like I mentioned, I was riding my mountain bike, but I didn't mention how. I was riding a mountain bike 100 miles a week.
Oh my.
I was in pretty good shape.
I bet.
I exercised. Aside from that, I exercised regularly. At one time, I worked for Bally's. I was a salesman. I wasn't, a trainer or anything like that, but I was in good shape.
Right.
One time, I was doing 500 sit-ups a day. But I would change my workout all the time. But the main thing is, when I say that I rode 100 miles a week, a lot of that was really aggressive. I used to be on a motorcycle stunt team. If I rode for 10 miles in a day, literally miles of that were doing wheelies and jumps and stuff. Like at that time, I could wheelie a mountain bike for 4.5 miles.
Wow, that's impressive. That's crazy.
Further than what I could ride one today.
Right. And that was what you did. That was your not your hobby, but that's what you like to do on your spare time. It
was exercise.
Okay.
It was actually full body exercise.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now that you're dealing with fibro, how has your wife of 34 years, am I correct, helped you cope with fibro? 34, yeah.
It's actually caused a lot of problems for us. I can't have a regular job. Some days I feel okay. And when I say I feel okay, that means on my best day, most people would call in sick.
Right.
To work and say, I'm not going to do this. But when I have a really bad episode from it, and it can last days,
mm-hmm.
like I'll not cut my fingernails because it hurts to do that.
Right.
Have you ever experienced that?
Yes.
Like my fingernails being cut
mm-hmm.
actually hurts.
It's similar. It's like the allodynia, right? The pain on the skin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
and it's like I said, look, I'm kind of a tough guy. Like
right.
when I crashed on my mountain bike, I literally rode 1.5 miles through the desert back to my car, wheelied up to the car, and put my mountain bike on the bike rack and drove home. So I don't, I've broken my back before. I've fractured my neck. I've had fractures in both of my feet. I suck up a lot of pain.
Right.
And this has caused a lot of problems for my wife and I. It's put a lot of strain on our relationship.
So she's not coping with it very well then?
Well, she didn't. She's done a lot better lately. About 3 years ago, she got in a really bad car accident
mm-hmm.
to where she broke her back in a couple of places and broke her arm and fractured both hands. She's like really a trooper. I got to tell you, she's like one of the. Like I told you, I was on a motorcycle stunt team.
Mm-hmm.
I saw guys cry with less injuries than what she had.
Right.
When I got to the hospital, she was laying on the gurney. Her arm is almost like laying next to her. It's completely detached. Her back is broken in 2 places. Her hand had to have pins in every finger, and her other hand was fractured as well.
So now
Not
she can relate, right? She can relate a little bit to what you're dealing with after being through that, I imagine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, she sustained these injuries at 49 years old.
Oh, God.
And so it's been 3.5 years. She hasn't recovered from them.
Right.
Like she'll have a good day too. She'll
mm-hmm.
have a good day where she feels like doing something. She'll do stuff, go to the store, take the grandkids, pick them up and stuff do things that she's really not supposed to do.
Right.
The next 2 days, she might be in bed all day, recovering from that.
So
just like somebody that's been injured.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. So how has that your relationship with your children, how has that affected? I mean, they're older now, I imagine. How are they? Do they understand what you're going through, or do they think it's all in your head, kind of thing?
That's obviously, I think you kind of know the answer to that. That's what you get from everybody. They think that this is all in your head because it's not a visual thing. I mean, they know what I've been through, but they don't understand it's as bad as what it is. I whenever I've been to the hospital for anything, and my broken back, my everything that I've ever done, I have never said that I was in more pain than a 9, because a 10 should be for the people that they're cutting out of cars, that are missing an arm,
right.
Stuff like that. That to me, you have to have some kind of reserve for somebody that's really been hurt.
Yeah.
For that. So like when they ask me what my pain level is, I'll say like 5 or 6, but that's because I'm not a wuss. You know what I mean? It's just the.
It's not even just that, obviously you're not a wuss, all the things you've been through, but it's not even so much that. I think we get to a point that we're so tolerant of the pain because we've been in pain so long that it doesn't seem as bad because we've gotten used to it. I know saying that sounds strange, but really we've gotten used to being in pain so much that our pain, which would be a 9 or 10 for most people, is a 5 or 6 to us because we've gotten used to being this way.
Because we've been recalibrated.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's like like just a really quick relating thing. Like the FDA, when there's a certain mercury level in the fish that they're trying to maintain, once it gets to be impossible to keep the fish below that mercury level, they just raise the levels. They recalibrate it.
Really?
They say, okay, we can't maintain it at this level. That's one of the things that really happens. But that's exactly like with us, right? Because we know that there's never going to be a time. There hasn't been a time since I was in the recovery room in 2003 that I have not been in pain. Not a minute.
Right.
Of some kind. Yeah. So you just again you kind of go back to your 0 as other people's 6.
Right. You're so correct. I'm dealing with what we're dealing with on a daily basis and always being in pain. I imagine your grandchildren bring you a lot of joy, but there's probably certain activities you can't do. So what do you share with them?
I'm sorry, you kind of cut out a couple of times.
Oh, sorry.
For some reason.
I'm sure that your 5 grandchildren must bring you a lot of joy, but I imagine with the pain that we're in, typically you have to limit your activities. So what kind of activities do you share with them?
Well, that's just it. For one, my thing was all of my kids growing up, I rode bikes with them. They all started riding without training wheels before they were 3 years old.
Right.
So they were riding my oldest son was riding 8-mile bike trips when he was a year and a half. Well, just when we first had training wheels on his bike.
Right.
When he turned a little bit over 2, he was riding up and down the boardwalk at Huntington Beach because we lived in California before. Right. So he would ride from the pier all the way to where the boardwalk ended, and then back.
That's wow.
On a little tiny bicycle. So now I can't do that with my grandchildren, and it's very, very frustrating to me.
Yeah.
And you asked me before about getting this fixed or removed or whatever.
About your hernia or the mesh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still have that mesh inside me.
Oh, you do? Okay.
And I for the longest time I couldn't get anybody to take me seriously. So I finally did about 6 years ago. I was literally in the emergency room, and the doctor, I was meeting with the surgeon who said, "Oh yeah, these are garbage. I never put these in people. I only do this one way, and that you have to open somebody up and do it the right way."
Okay.
I
wanted to
go,
say,
"Oh my gosh, I'm in love with this guy."
Right. I wanted to say, I heard that there was some kind of lawsuit against the mesh. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I actually have the packet sitting in my house right now. Okay. It's pretty thick, and I'm going through it. Good. It's a lot of information that I have to provide for them. But what I was telling you about as far as like meeting with that surgeon, so I'm sitting here with the surgeon, I'm thinking, this is my guy, right? I'm having this guy fix it because I'm not going to let somebody else ever operate on me again and actually trust them because, again, I didn't authorize this mesh being put in. So literally while I'm in there, my wife calls me on the phone. Her mother passed away suddenly, not sick, not in the hospital. I'm literally in the emergency room talking to the surgeon. I just tell him I have to go. Like she was just sitting up on her couch and she just died. Wow. And so we go to the funeral, and while we're there, her last name was Robertson. So while we're there, there's somebody else at the funeral whose last name is also Robertson, the other people that are having one in the other room. And I just walked over to this lady and I said, "Look, I noticed that our names are the same for who we lost, and I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry for your loss." Right. And she says, "Yes, that was my sister. She went in for gallbladder surgery and it failed, and they went in to fix it and they killed her." Oh my God.
Seriously?
So, needless to say, I was in a rush to have this done.
No, not at all. Oh my gosh.
So, but then, and I started looking it up on the internet, and it has like a 50% fatality rate in surgeries. Like almost half the people die.
That's insane. Yeah, I understand your trepidation. I wouldn't want to do that either. That's insane. Oh my God.
A friend of mine from high school go ahead.
That's wow. I wasn't going to bring this up till later, but I just found out my aunt passed away. My mom just called me on the way home from Arizona, where you live, as a matter of fact. On our way home, I got the phone call. I just lost another aunt not too long ago, and a cousin, and you know, even though I wasn't super close to her, she just seemed to have passed away, hopefully in her sleep. I don't get a lot of information, but just knowing someone passed away, and you are at the same funeral home with the same last name, I don't know how to put it into words, but basically, because you met her at that time, it was almost like you were not meant to have that surgery, and she was there to help you. Do you get what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, like a serendipity.
Yes, something like that.
Serendipitous, right?
It's yeah. I mean, it's basically like you were meant to meet her for her to tell you that you shouldn't do this. It's quite remarkable that happened the way that it did, and I'm happy that it did. That's a really high fatality rate for a surgery like that, and I couldn't imagine you wanting to go through with it. Of course, are you able to handle the pain on a day-to-day basis? For example, having all this pain, how would you, what advice would you give to people to deal with it? The fibro pain and the gallbladder situation and the hernia, what do you do to get your mind off of that? Your comedy, for example?
Yes, actually the stand-up has been therapy that has really helped me get through this, and it's something that's been, again, just like therapy. I don't know if I would have continued to make it, because I've really dealt with a lot of stuff because of this, and on top of everything else I had, just like you said, I lost, in the last 7 years, I lost my brother, my mother, my mother-in-law, 2 brothers-in-law, and my sister.
Wow. So,
and everybody was alive in both of our families until that time, except grandparents, but
right.
We're 50, so
yeah. We just lost 7 people.
Yes,
7 people in this past year. So same as you. A lot of people just suddenly in this past year. It's crazy. So you're a comedian as well. Basically, that's how I found you, because you and my love Bill is a comedian. Are you finding that using how you're feeling in your comedy, or because I don't know if I've actually seen you perform, but I was hoping I'd meet you last night. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see you when we were in Arizona, but I haven't seen or heard your comedy yet. I will definitely check it out. But do you use your pain or things that you go through in life as part of your stand-up?
I've tried to do that, and the problem has been that it's just so negative. You know what I mean? It's not funny. It becomes just an ugly rant. I've written out a bunch of stuff, but every time I try to even work it out myself, it just I can't deal with it. I've got like a little short bit that I've done on it, but that's it.
Yeah.
It's really hard to relive it. Although I can tell you this. When we go to court, because I'm going to have the operation done. I've been talking to a surgeon now, that same surgeon, by the way.
Okay.
I've been talking to him. We're going to go forward with this.
Really?
And I get all the paperwork done for the lawsuit, so if something happens to me, at least my wife and kids will be taken care of. But I can tell you this, after that surgery is over, there will be a large bit on this unless we settle something out of court, and I'll name names and I'll name product names and all.
I don't blame you.
And I'll do my best to make this something that gets onto an album. I would like to ruin the surgeon and the people that make this crappy device.
Right. Since comedy you aren't really able to use as an outlet, what are you doing to get your mind off of how you're feeling from day to day?
I got to tell you, because this is something that what it does is it kind of entangles your intestines and stuff. So inflammation does have something to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I will take an Aleve once in a while. I try not to ever do anything twice in a row. I rarely drink. I don't do drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mentioned I lost my sister. I lost my sister to what they termed as a accidental drug overdose, the typical acetaminophen overdose type of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I was against that before that happened.
Right.
And I just seen that's the killer thing is the painkiller thing is the biggest drug epidemic that we have.
Yes.
People going from painkillers to heroin to,
Mm-hmm. I don't take any of that stuff for that exact reason. I don't take any opiates of any sort. I don't even like taking Advil, so I'm completely on the same page with you when it comes to that.
Now, here's the kicker too.
Sure.
Every once in a while, I do use medical marijuana, but I have to let everybody know I'm pretty disciplined towards this. Like I'll take 2 hits,
mm-hmm.
that's it. I will never allow myself to become stoned or anything from it.
Right.
It's just the only time I ever do it is when I need to take the edge off it so I can sleep.
Well, you are aware that
sometimes I just
I'm sorry. You are aware that there's strains or things out there now that don't give you the high anymore. They just help your body, like the CBD oils and things of that nature.
Right. And the edibles and
mm-hmm.
things like that. And I am the biggest anti-smoker that there's ever been.
Right. Same here.
My mother died from lung cancer.
Okay.
But the thing is, the reason why I prefer using a pipe instead is because you have more control. When people make those edibles and stuff, mm-hmm. once you take it, you're just along for the ride. So if it was too much, or because sometimes like all of that settles in. Like if you take a cookie or something, all of that settles in one part of it or something.
Right.
And you just, I'm not, like I said, if I ever do have a drink, it's only because I like to taste a margarita or I like to taste a beer,
right.
Once in a while or something. It's not for the alcohol or the buzz or anything like that. It's just because I like the flavor.
I gotcha.
So I don't.
I'm sorry.
I don't like that feeling at all.
Right.
Well, like I said, I used to be on a motorcycle stunt team. I used to be in a situation where I had to have all my thoughts and wits about me and stuff. And mm-hmm. comedy is kind of the same way. I don't ever drink around anybody in the comedy world. I don't drink on stage, at the shows, after the shows with other comics.
That's a good discipline.
Or anything. I feel it's a business, and I treat it that way.
Okay. That's actually very smart. I had
just my thing.
You were saying something?
No, that was it.
Okay. I just had one last question for you. Have you found that your intimate moments with your wife, have new meaning? It's a new, things are different than they used to be.
Yeah, for both of us now, of course, right. Because sometimes the pain is an issue for her, and of course, women have to be in a state of zen, almost for right. anything to happen.
Right.
But for me, it was really affected again from the surgery, not just the pain itself, but from the surgery as well. One of the things that this surgery did is it strangled the blood flow to one of my testicles.
Okay.
And I again went to the doctor. The doctor says that's not what it is. You just have what's called a blown hydrocele, which is like you got kicked or something,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
excess of fluid. And I told him, no, you're absolutely wrong. And he said, well, we're going to go in. Trust me, it'll be like 20 minutes. I'll go in there. I'll fix it. It'll take about 45 days for it to get back to normal. My one testicle was the size of my fist.
Oh, Jesus.
So I said, okay, whatever. So I go in, have the surgery. He comes out, talks to my wife. The surgery was only supposed to be 20 minutes. It was like an hour and 20. Mm-hmm. He said, just tell your husband he was right. I've never seen anything like this. Been doing this for 19 years. That was definitely something from this problem he has. Cut off the blood flow. He said it was calcified like stone. He sent it off to be tested because just let him know that I had to remove it, and I'll see him in the office like in a week. And he dipped. He didn't even wait. If you're gonna cut somebody's testicle off, even though you told them that you weren't going to do, you think that you could stick around and tell him, but he bailed on me.
Oh, geez.
So that was something that has obviously, affected this. And the other thing that happened from that surgery was I actually got, from all the bandages and stuff, I ended up with another women problem. I ended up with a yeast infection from that.
Jesus. Oh my
so
God.
if you think that having only one testicle makes you feel like less of a man, it does, by the way. It's nothing compared to only having one testicle while you're standing in line trying to add things to the conveyor belt so everybody there can't see that you're buying Vagisil for the yeast infection that you have on your penis.
Well, I will say this, guys can get this from their woman. That does happen. It does get transferred over. So I'm sure you're not the first man, but I can imagine the embarrassment you must have felt having to deal with that on top of everything else you've been through. And you've been through quite a lot. Floyd, we're getting to the end of the show, so I'm going to have to wrap it up with you. But thank you so much for your side of it and your input. And, I really appreciated your time. I apologize for there's some difficulties today with keeping you on the phone and a little extra noise today in the house. But it means a lot to me that you called in and that we could talk with you. I'll catch up with you later on, and I will let you know as soon as we release this episode. Okay, sweetheart?
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Floyd. Have a good night. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Wow. That got interesting towards the end.
Yeah.
That really got interesting towards the end.
A lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And what I appreciate the most about that conversation is that he was very real.
Yeah.
He wasn't trying to hide anything. He wasn't trying to, he just laid it all out there. And that's what we need, people to be honest like that. Because if we don't and we keep those things to ourselves and we act like everything's fine, then other people listening in aren't going to relate because there's nothing to relate to because you're not telling people what's really going on. So I appreciate that frankness more than ever. Man, a lot of stuff. Yeah, when he mentioned the mesh, I thought right away. I know that was there was a big lawsuit over that, and he's going through the surgery, but I can imagine that there still has to be that fear. 50%, is extremely high.
Percentage.
Yeah, it's extremely high number.
I was really more concerned with when you asked him about his kids.
Yeah,
It's like, how does the family dynamic work when the man of the house is going through it?
It seemed to be, he answered fairly briefly, but it seemed to be that it's typical, and what the typical thing is, and it happens to the women and men, obviously, people don't want to believe us. When we tell them we're not feeling well or, that we have all this pain, they think that we're just making it up, or they just blow it off like, whatever. There's a lot of us that have family members who just don't believe it. They think we're just maybe looking for pity or whatever the case may be, but they don't believe it. And, it didn't seem like, they gave him any acknowledgement to believing in it. So, I can imagine how difficult that is, because it is. I've dealt with people like that who act like you're just talking out your behind, and that you're just trying to get attention. Yeah. People think that, and which is silly and sad in itself, that people just assume that right away instead of believing someone when they're telling you that they're in pain. You think that they couldn't have come up with something else to get attention, that they're going to say they're in pain, that's the way. I find that absurd that people do that.
Well, I guess, the technology and the sciences of diagnosing different things it's speeding up and becoming more easier for people to be like, oh, okay, there is something to this. Because
I'm hoping that is definitely the case with Fibro, for example, because there's not a specific test. It's a process of eliminating all the other possibilities in order to find out that you have that. It's a long process. I hope that someday they either find a test to actually discover that it is. I've read and seen different things, like maybe brain waves are different for people who have fibromyalgia. There's a few things because it is a neurological issue. But I do hope that at some point that they do find something that can say, yes, you have this, instead of having to find out if you have all these massive amounts of other tests that you have to take in order to find out. When I was going to the doctor and saying this hurts or my knee hurts, and they're doing X-rays and MRIs, and I don't see anything wrong. There's nothing wrong. Your tissues are fine. Your muscles are fine. Your joints look fine. This is when I was younger, of course, and things weren't quite as arthritic as they are these days. But you get to a point where you start questioning your own self because they can't find anything, but you're like, but I know I feel this pain, But then you get to the point. Like I was about 5 years when I finally was like, because I didn't go to the doctor, like I mentioned before, for probably about 6 years. So I went back searching for an answer because there were so many things I was feeling. And I'm like, there's got to be something wrong. I can't just go with, we can't find anything. I was determined to find an answer. And, unfortunately, I found a whole bunch of answers and a whole bunch of things wrong, so I wasn't quite prepared for that. And I think the worst part, and they did this to him as well, like making you think it's something even much worse, like cancer, for example. They were saying, and the girls and I talked about this in a few episodes back, about them saying, you might have this, you might have that. That is probably the worst thing they could do to us, to tell us that we might have something so horrible. And because then your mind is just erasing. Now, you might think, we think the worst, and then when it's something good, it's good news. No, because you've just stressed that person out for X amount of time until you find out what the real answer is.
Said and just walked away. And you're left holding the bag.
They just left him with, it might be cancer. Like, why do, and it's sad because doctors are somewhat, they can be somewhat insensitive, and I understand that that's probably part of their training because they can't get connected to all of their patients because people die, and I can imagine emotionally that would really affect somebody. So the fact that they aren't very connected to us when they're telling us these diagnoses, I understand the concept of why they do it, but to be the patient and have someone do that, it's so cold. It's such a cold feeling, and you're just like, you're looking at them like, okay, I might have cancer, I might have MS, I might, they were telling me all these things. And so I can imagine that moment, hearing those words, and then him walking away, and then just processing what he just heard. It had to be one of the most stressful moments in his life. And maybe not more so, but I imagine it was fairly equivalent to going through the accident in the first place, just all the stress of the accident and the pain. But having someone tell you something like that, that's a devastating thing to say. When I found I had skin cancer, I was a mess, and it's at least that was an actual diagnosis. Thankfully, it wasn't the deadly one. It was the one right before the last stage. It wasn't melanoma. I always forget the name. I'll have to look it up. But it's the one right before that, So thankfully, it was something they could cut out of me, and I'm fine. But that doesn't mean more can occur. And it doesn't mean that I can't get it someday. But that one wasn't melanoma. Now, if it was melanoma, I would have to, go through cancer treatment. So I'm thankful that it wasn't that bad, but that doesn't mean I'm free and clear, so that's the scary part. So I'm always checking my moles and things like that. But
the only other thing I wanted to say was I wanted to ask him about the physical trauma, because this keeps coming up. Like the physical trauma of whatever it is that happens, that's what's the precursor to this fibro thing. It's like,
well, that's the thing I wanted to touch on. And that was one I wanted to read. What kind of time do we have right now, Tony?
You're running a little over.
We're at 40 something.
Yeah, we're about there.
Okay. I'm gonna leave that out. I was going to talk about some connections of fibromyalgia, but we've run a little long.
We have more shows.
Yes, we have more shows.
So much more.
So probably next week I'm going to touch on that, and hopefully I'll have someone send in a journey. The young lady who was supposed to send it in last week. If not, either way, I'm going to talk about all of the things that Fibro is connected to, and there's a whole list of them, so that maybe people who don't like to read, or maybe your eyes hurt because it also affects our eyes, or our eyes can be blurry or in pain or migraines and whatnot. I like reading these things for you so you can just listen. And make it easier on you. I'm here to help. So next week I will read the list and talk about all those things that are connected, and a lot of us are probably going to have a lot of those symptoms, unfortunately. I touched earlier on I lost an aunt. I also went on vacation, kind of like my birthday week thing, and we went to the Grand Canyon, and it was a lovely day. It was my love Bill and I and his brother and his brother's wife V, so Sam and V and their son Leo, and it was a nice day. We walked around, we checked a couple sites, and the final site that we went to, it was probably within the hour after we had showed up to that part of the the Grand Canyon where some man had slipped and fallen off of one of the cliffs. He may or may not have been trying to take a selfie or trying to be daredevil. Who knows how it happened? But it was a 30-year-old man. I want to say he was Asian or something of that nature. Don't quote me. You'll find it on the news. It happened on Tuesday afternoon at the Grand Canyon on the 14th. It was Tuesday 14th, I think. Yeah. And so I'm very empathetic. And even though I didn't know the man, just hearing that information and knowing that just happened right before we got to that park, because we were at the Grand Canyon the whole time. So it happened while we were there. It's just that we had showed up to that part of the park just after. There were ambulance and police officers and things there, and they had a rescue team. And I did post a photo of the rescue team on the mountain looking down, trying to figure out how to retrieve him from the bottom of the mountain. So needless to say, I had a really rough night. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was a long road back to where we were staying, the resort, and the next morning, I wasn't up 5 minutes before it hit my mind again. And of course, I was searching to find out, did he actually die or did he make it? And unfortunately, he didn't make it. So I know it probably shouldn't affect me like this because I don't know him, but it does. It makes me sad. Anyway, on a lighter note, so next week we're going to talk about those things. Once again, thank you all so much for listening. It means the world to us. And come back next week and I'll have more stuff for you. Thanks again. And remember, you're not alone. We love you guys.